Hello and welcome. This is first economics video for OCR A2. On this section, I think I'll put it up in a different section. I'll decide later on. But as you should know from the title when I've put it up, this is the economics of leisure. The labour I'll set up in another video, another playlist, if my computer can manage to upload one or two. So anyway, leisure. The first section that we're going to do in this part of the A2 course is this very small chapter. It's just about work and leisure and what work time is and what leisure time is. And there is a diagram that we'll throw in there, but it's not too difficult to get your head around the first diagram. The second section, that's a big section. It's most of the leisure side of the course, if not all of it, apart from this first little bit about work and what leisure time is. The rest of it is about the leisure industries, and we'll be drawing a lot more diagrams in there. But for the moment, what I'll be going through is I'll be going through what leisure time is, what work is. We'll be doing something called the backward sloping labour supply curve, and then I'll be telling you what the end firm market concentration ratio is, and that is a lot more simpler than it sounds. But there's one thing to get your head around on that one. Okay, so the first thing, what is work? Well, work is a physical. So we'll sort of mention this again in the labour part of the section, part of the course. But work is basically a physical or a mental task that produces some kind of result, or so produces a result. It could be a physical result, or it could be a mathematical or some other kind of result. So basically, time, sort of 9 to 5, sort of working. Hopefully, it's quite simple. Leisure time. So basically, this is time outside of working hours, and it's where people have the time to do whatever they choose. But the key thing here is to recognise that well, you should know this anyway. To be able to have leisure time, you've got to work. Now, this backward sloping labour supply curves allows me to demonstrate something which demonstrates the opportunity cost and why people choose work and when they choose leisure. Now, opportunity cost, that's an F581 term. This course, F583, is heavily based, sort of builds your knowledge on from F581. So that's why I mentioned opportunity cost there. So basically an opportunity cost, and if you remind yourself what opportunity cost was, I'll just recap it for you if you don't. It's the the cost of the next best alternative that's been forgone. So if in the context of work and leisure, if you choose to go do 1 hour of work, you earn money to do your leisure time, but you lose that 1 hour of leisure because obviously you can't have both. You can't just produce an extra hour from somewhere. So you're forgoing that. And what the worker chooses, or the individual chooses what to do, is based on their living standards of what they require. So it might be different for different people, but generally it's a living standard, and that's why the government's introduced this living wage for the older, not necessarily too old, but the older generation compared to mine. So that's what that is, and there's a bit of opportunity cost in there. So I sort of mentioned it then, the backward sloping labour supply curve, and I've kind of putting off of writing all that stuff on the board just then, so I can write the draw the diagram a little bit bigger for you, and not have to rub all the stuff off twice, because obviously I have to rub this off as well. Okay, so draw yourself a pair of axes if you've not done already. And then on the bottom, what we're going to have is, on the vertical axis, what we're going to have is real wage rate. I had a threat then, I was going to say something else. And then wage. And then on the x-axis, or the horizontal axis, whichever you want to call it, we're going to have the number of hours worked. Sorry about the noise, it is Manchester, which isn't the best place. So anyway, so obviously it's some kind of back sloping curve. So what it should look like is sort of a bit horizontal and sort of swoops backwards like that. A bit sort of more curved than that, but you get the idea. And we're going to label that curve SL. Do remember that. Now what I'm going to draw is I'm going to draw 3 wage rates. Obviously, this is just to demonstrate to you, but you may be asked to draw this. So I'm going to label one in the middle, sort of when it's on the flat bit of the curve, and we're going to call that W2. I should have really done it in the order I'm going to. Well, W2 is quite a key one. W1, so just before it starts to curve, and then somewhere above W2, and we'll call that W3. So where it's sort of in between W1 and 2. And W3, what it corresponds with, sorry, just let me refer to my diagram I drew before, so I've drawn some before, just certify what the labels are. So you should have 3 wage rates there labelled, and obviously these correspond. Obviously W should be over here actually, but it doesn't matter. And this should be H1, H3 because it corresponds with W3, and H2 corresponds with W2. Okay, so they're your 3 wage rates corresponding to your 3 number of hours worked. Now what you'll notice is from W1 to W2, what we actually see is we do see an increase in the real wage rate from W1 to W2, but we see an increase in the number of hours worked from H1 to H2. But if we carry on this increasing, if we give the worker more money per hour, this is what it's assuming, from W2 to W3, we actually see a decrease in the number of hours worked from H2 to H3. And we need to ask ourselves, well, why is that? Well, it does link back to our original idea of opportunity cost. But there's 2 effects you need to know about, okay? So one is called the income effect. And leave yourself a bit of space to note down what these are. So the income effect, I'm not going to write what it is, I'm just going to write the names of the 2 effects. The income effect and the substitution effect, if I can spell substitution. So I'll just move out of the way after this to give you seconds to write that all down. So hopefully you've been able to do that. Just give you a few more minutes to just copy that down and before I start talking again. Okay, so the first one that comes first, sorry, I need enough time, is a substitution effect. So what we say, the correct way of saying it is, at lower wage rates, now before I continue actually, so hopefully you've got that lower wage rates bit down. If there's a low wage and the manager offers a worker a pay rise, they'll say, oh yeah, that's more per hour, I can afford to spend a bit more time working so I can improve my standard of living. Because we're assuming at lower wage rates, you're not going to be happy with that. Your standard of living is, your needs are not going to be met. You're still going to earn a bit more until you get to your W2, which we assume, just for demonstration's sake, is the wage rate where you're saying, yeah, I'm happy with this amount of money per hour or per week I'm getting. So at lower wage rates, we say the worker's needs are not yet met. So if there is a pay rise, and if you've drawn this diagram, you need to link to your diagram, say from W1, if there is a pay rise or wage increase from W1 to W2, then the worker will choose to increase their hours worked they'll increase their hours worked from H1 to H2. And you say this invokes the opportunity cost. This means they invoke an opportunity cost. I just put OP because I'm lazy. This means they invoke an opportunity cost for as they forgo some however many hours they work, so H hours of work, they forgo H hours of leisure, for an increased income. And if you were to take that a bit further, for an increased income, you would say that the worker does this opportunity cost because their standards of living have not been met. And we've sort of said that from the needs have not been met, but whichever way you prefer to say it. Now obviously the income effect is the opposite of that. At higher wage rates, so you can just literally put the opposite of what we put here, literally word for word. Oh, not literally word for word, but you get the idea. So at higher wage rates, the workers' needs have now been met. So at higher wage rates, the workers' needs have been met. So if they're, again, we're linking to the diagram. So if there's a pay rise, and now we're not going from W1 to W2, we're increasing from W2 to W3. So if there is a pay rise, again you could put wage increase, pay rise from W1 to W2, to W3, sorry, W2 to W3, don't know what I was talking about before. So the pay rise from W2 to W3, the worker will be able to have the same income but be able to have more leisure time. So the worker will invoke, again, an opportunity cost, but this time it's the other way around, as they will trade H hours for work, H hours of work for H hours of leisure. And now H, again, is just a number, I should mention that before, H hours of leisure, as they will have the same, they will still have the same income. Okay, so that's how you'd explain them to effects. Now, if you were to explain this diagram, what you'd say is there's a substitution effect up to W2, and then there's a income effect after W2 from W2 to W3. And if you wanted to go into it in a bit more detail, then you'd give these examples here and don't mention in terms of like opportunity cost and related to the diagram. Obviously, you might be given H3, H2, but if you don't, then you just use your guided methods there, putting H2 and H3 into the equation. Okay, so that's your economics of work and leisure there. That's the first part of it. There's one other thing I said that I was going to talk you through. Sorry, I've just got my list here for what I've got to talk about. We also talked about the N-firm market concentration ratio. Now I'm just going to draw it up here. So if you ignore the diagram, and I'm just going to focus on the top right hand corner of the board here. So the N-firm market concentration ratio. So it's the, I'll tell you what it is. It's the top N number of firms. So the N firm, that could be top the 5 market firm concentration ratio, but it's generally 3 or 4. So so now knowing that's a accumulation of the top 3 or 4 or N firms in the market. So the N firm market concentration ratio is the top N firms, their market share added together. So if it was the 5 firm market concentration ratio, it'd be the accumulation or the addition of the top 5 firms of their market share, of the addition of them. Okay, so assuming we've got this, I'll draw you a pie chart and I'll let you have a go at calculating the 3 firm market concentration ratio. One or two things. I want you to do this because there's one thing you need to look out for, and I want to see either if you can remember it, if you've done it before, or if you can see it. So this is a crud pie chart here. So say 20% of the market is taken up by Thomas Cook. This is hypothetical, by the way, you'll be given these figures. 20% of the market is taken up by Thomas Cook. 10% of the market is by, I'm going to make these up now, Johnson's. I know that's a cleaning company, but still. Again, this is completely irrelevant, doesn't matter what the firm's names are. And then 40% is going to be taken up by others. So we're on 70%. Yeah, so, and then 5% is taken up by what should we call it? Eds. So 5% is Eds, 10% is Thompson's, 20% is Thomas Cook, 40% is others, and then we'll have the last remaining 25% as Pete's. So these are good travel agents here you're hearing about. Pete's, I can't even spell that. So calculate the 3 firm market concentration ratio there. So remember, it's the top 3 market firms. We've got 25% is Pete's, 20% is Thomas Cook, 10% is Thompson's, 40% is others, and 5% is Ed's. And these are all, we could assume these to be travel agents or whatnot. So I'll just give you a minute now. Well, I definitely don't look for the lid of my pen. And I'll give you just a minute or so, depending on how long it takes me to find a pen to work that out. And I'll just give you a small hint. There is one sort of thing I've put, there is. One thing in there that might confuse some of you. So, just give you a minute, as I said, to have a work through that. Okay, so I'm assuming you've had a go at that. I might just pause the video anyway. So, what's the top 3%? Now, the thing I was trying to get you to watch out for is you don't just look at the percentage and go, oh, 40%, that's the top one. The next one, 25% Pete's. And then the next one is 20%, so 20 plus 25 plus 40, so 85%. And therefore the top 3 market concentration ratio is 85%. If you got that, you're incorrect. Because this others is, we could be made up of 35% of one firm. Sorry, it could be made up of, it's all less than 5%, sorry, so it's all, it could be 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, etc., 2%, and a 1% or 0.5%. So this isn't one firm, that's 40% is others. They're the other firms, smaller firms that take up a larger percent of this market. So what we're looking for is single firms. The top 3 single firms is Pete's, Thomas Cook and Johnson's, and then we add them together, so 20 plus 25 plus 10. Sorry, 55%. So the N firm, the 3 firm market concentration ratio is 55%. And that's what you'd class it as. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one other thing, actually, that has just popped into my head while I was giving you a minute to calculate that. I'm not sure if I should really mention it, but I'm going to. Basically, there's a wide variety of markets that we're going to look at during the F583 course. The main ones are the monopoly, the perfect competition market, the oligopoly. Sec, did I miss anything up? I bet we have, you know. yeah, so perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and then you oligopoly. I think that's all of them. Just make me bearings together. Yeah, so they're the main ones. What I'm going to focus on really is monopoly. Now, monopoly is a market where there is a one specific firm. So monopoly, one firm. Duopoly, guess that, two firms. Okay, so you can't just, this market here, if you've got, say we worked out, this all relates to this by the way, we worked out a market concentration ratio of 55%. Now if I'm going to rub out all these figures here, and all we know, say if we didn't work it out, and all we knew, I'll just kind of rub out the circle there, sorry, all we know is that the free firm market concentration ratio is 55%. Now we can't make a judgment on that market to say, oh, that's a, well that could be, so change to 55%, make it look a bit more obvious to try and get my point across. Say the free firm market concentration ratio was, free firm market concentration ratio was 90%. Now you can't look at that and go, oh, that's a very high figure, that's a very contestable market, or that's a monopolistic market or a duopolistic market. We don't know, because assuming all we know is the free firm market concentration ratio, we can't say, oh, this market is very contestable, or it's just full of one firm, because we don't know the individual, how it's broken down in terms of what firm has what percentage. Obviously that's going to be made up of a variety of smaller 5% and etc. other little markets as well. So we can't say anything about that. That's a key thing to work down, because that could be broken up into, say, three firms. It could be one firm could have 80% and the other two firms could have 5% each of that 90%. Or we could have it more evenly split, of each had 30%, which would be a tripopoly, if that was anything to go by. So you can see, just by looking at them two figures, I don't know if you can see them right on the board, so it could be 85 and 5 or 30, 30 and 30. And they're very different market structures. So that just gives you an idea that we can't just assume by looking at the N firm market concentration ratio that we know exactly what kind of market it is. We need to know more about it. But generally that's just something to look out for. He wouldn't directly ask you something about that on the exam. That's just a key thing to look out for. So hopefully that's been the good introduction to F583. As I said, that's the end of section 1, so it shouldn't have been too difficult. The only thing you just might need to go over is the substitution and income effects. Just make sure you remember the substitution effect comes first, and the income effect comes after, so in terms of higher wage rates. So hopefully again it's been quite helpful. Any comments or anything you think I've missed out from the section 1, but there's nothing else in my book, but if you think I've missed anything out or gone over anything too quickly, you can either watch it again or just send me a comment or drop a comment on the video, and I'll try and answer your comments as quickly as I can. Also, if you want me to create another video in terms of the context of F583 that you're currently stuck on, or a given question, just drop us a comment on the video, or I think you can personal message the account. Whichever, any troubles, just give me a shout, and I'll try and answer your questions either with a personalised video or just generally in the comment section. So hopefully we'll see you in the next video, and you've enjoyed this one. We'll see you soon.